Greetings and peace, beautiful Scorpio moon sign folks. This video may resonate with you if you're a Scorpio or you have Scorpio as your ascendant or rising sign, but much of what I will be sharing does more or less pertain to Scorpio moon, lunar Scorpios. And remember to take into consideration your full natal chart when you're looking at any astrological aspect. It certainly wouldn't be appropriate to just exclusively look at one aspect and form, a judgment about a person just off of that aspect. So if someone says, Tauruses are greedy or Scorpios are obsessive, you don't want to just take that information and run with it. I know most of you have been looking into these things for quite a while. You've developed some discernment about how to interpret astrology. And keep in mind, again, we're intended to transcend these things. So if there's anything that doesn't quite resonate with you or makes you feel unsettled about the characteristics or behaviors of a particular sign, you can transcend it. It's not fixed or set in stone. Even if you are a fixed sign, we certainly have choice based on the knowledge that we gain about a thing. So I will go ahead and get into the video and just point out some very interesting things, because in studying astrology, you can form a general understanding and then you can go more in depth and it can become a study, because remember, it's more of a science than, or some will consider it a pseudoscience, but it's definitely more of a study than something you can just look into and really have a full understanding of it. So if you're someone who's looking to gain a deeper understanding about yourself, about your mate, about your children, and how our behavior affects our daily lives and how our characteristics can develop or even devolve. Sometimes as people get older, certain characteristics and behaviors become more prevalent, whereas we think, I've gone through certain phases as a child, so now I'm so mature, I don't deal with certain emotions, and that's not necessarily the case. So sometimes we can lose our childlike innocence and our childlike interpretation of the world, and as we get older, more harsh aspects can begin to manifest in our natal chart, because we're starting to have adult situations. We're having sex, we're having relationships, we're doing certain things that we didn't do as children. So our emotions are heightened, and therefore these energies can start to manifest as we get older. So it's great if you are looking into these things using astrology as a tool so that you can be on guard or be aware or be conscious of what things are happening in your unconscious before the unconscious smacks you in the face, and then you realize you have certain behaviors that have pushed people away or affected your relationships. So enough about that. We're going to look at something very, very interesting about Scorpio moon in particular. Let me get a marker. So one thing I want to point out about the water element is, because when you're looking at astrology and each sign has its associated element, studying the water element in and of itself is quite fascinating. So some of the things that are associated with the water element would be memory. And memory has a lot to do with somebody can do something to you and you can forgive them, but you'll never forget. And Scorpios are known for having a very vengeful reaction when they've been crossed or hurt, or they're protecting someone they love and care about. So if you are a water sign, and this can apply to Pisces or Cancer, but specifically with Scorpio, it can turn into a sense of revenge, just being vengeful or even spiteful, or holding a grudge about something that has happened to you, because water is associated with memory. Water has memory. Again, something you can study on your own time. Water memory. With Cancer, they can hold on to something and be very emotional about it or hurt by it, but not necessarily be set out to get back at that person or at that, whatever transpired. They may not be set out to act on it. They can just hold that emotion, feel grief about it, or bothered by it. So with Scorpio, you have to keep in mind that if you don't do the necessary cleansing, as I mentioned in the video on 7 things to help you maintain your sanity, if you're not doing that emotional cleansing, you will carry around toxic emotions. And those emotions can start off as toxic, and they can become more damaging to you physically. So you will start to experience physiological effects of holding on to toxic emotions, such as that anger and bitterness can affect the kidneys, can affect your liver, can affect your heart, not just anger and bitterness, but grief, any pain, any trauma, you will start to have physiological effects. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Another thing associated with water is knowledge. And I mentioned this in the Gematria video, that if wisdom is associated with light, it enlightens us, empowers us, helps guide us. We're able to see clearly, establish discernment through wisdom. Then knowledge would be associated with water. Can you stop typing for a second? Water can be associated with knowledge, in that water it's something that empowers us and can fuel us physically. But when you think about knowledge, what it does for you, when you obtain some knowledge about something, that it does the same thing. It empowers you, it fuels you, it motivates you. So ignorance, some people will say, is bliss. And in some cases, dear Scorpio, you know that there's some things you just don't want to know, or you don't want to be exposed to in the form of knowledge, because now that you have that knowledge, you're responsible. It comes with this amount of obligation and power. So you have to be responsible with the knowledge you've gained, because you are psychic and intuitive. You may receive knowledge from on high, but just kind of sit on your ass about it and not teach people, or not share your insights, or open yourself up enough for people to receive from you the gifts that you have to offer, telling or teaching them something about themselves that they were just unaware of. Because remember, we're living amongst the masses of people who are blind to a lot of things, who are unaware, unawakened, or unconscious to their behaviors in their daily life, or what more there is to get out of life. Whereas Scorpio, you're truth seekers. You're that energy being associated with that Plutonian energy I spoke about in the sexual healing video. You're seeking something that is of truth and of substance, that goes beyond the mundane. So you have something to contribute, and you will likely have knowledge to contribute and offer to other people. And we'll get into the illustration in a moment, where you can see how this, this is true for you. Another thing to look at in terms of the water element is purification. Water is associated with purification. You can look at streams and creeks, how when water just cycles through nature, it naturally goes through a process of purification. So you are going to go through experiences of death and rebirth associated with the phoenix, where your psyche is being purified. So throughout my life, I've had many moments where a part of me, even a personality trait, would die off, and then a new part of me would emerge. So to someone who is an onlooker and who knows me, may think I'm switching up, or I've changed, or I'm not the same person. But ultimately, it's literally a transformation taking place, where the part of me that was very much fixated on one thing and one type of behavior and one type of lifestyle had to die off. So then I would pick up something new, something that resonated, something that was intended to help me grow and blossom. And others may not get it. They may resist that change in you and cut you off. But that's just what it is. You're going through a process of purification, because you deal with those depths. And when you go down to a low in your life, or you have a difficult time in your life, and at that time when you're down there, you have to acknowledge and see things as being a seed being planted. That right now you're under the earth, you're in this darkness, you're in this negative state, but something is going to come from that. Something is going to be birthed from that, because that's the nature of that Plutonian energy. Nothing ever just completely dies off, in the sense that what doesn't actually kill you will only make you stronger, will only empower you with knowledge, will only give you something to come up out of the ground with. Bear fruit of something, or like the phoenix, that rebirth into a whole new expression of self associated with the water element. Another thing to consider with the water element is reflection. That has to do with inner reflection. You're always doing inner work, which is why you like to be alone a lot of the time. Maybe even when you smoke weed, you're not the type of person that want to smoke with a big group of people. You just like to get in your zone. You like to vibe. You like to be alone, because you have so much inner happenings. So much is happening within you, And you can sit with that and be utterly comfortable being alone or in isolation for days, weeks, months, even years, where you're not, amongst your family and amongst your friends a lot. You might check in with everybody, but for the most part, you just prefer that inner work, and just that time spent processing your own emotions without people judging you, criticizing you, commenting on your change or lack thereof. You just need that time to yourself. Again, with water, we have to look at depth, which I talked about in the first video on Scorpio moon, that you are going into the depths of yourself, and in some cases the depths of other people. If you're into shamanism, if you're into psychic work, intuitive readings and things like that, you don't just grace the surface and give people generic and half thought out responses to their situation. You like to dig deep. And that is very much associated with the water element, and why you want to keep that element as pure as possible, so that you're able to see clearly. And then intuition, which deals with water, again, has a lot to do with your intuitive gifts, have a lot to do with what will empower you or allow you to feel strengthened throughout your life, because you have a guiding force that is readily available. Whereas not everyone it's hard to say, because I feel everyone has the ability to be intuitive or to have certain premonitions, but people don't tap into that. Whereas for you, your intuition is always readily accessible because you are doing that inner work a lot. And again, you have to keep in mind other astrological or planetary influences. You have to keep in mind other parts to your natal chart that will affect the things I'm saying. So it may not necessarily apply to all areas of your life. Your home life and relationships may be vastly different than your career or your friends, or different aspects will manifest different in your life, also depending on the houses that Scorpio is affecting or that Plutonian energy is affecting. So I want to go on to the illustration here. Let me see if I can bring this closer. Okay, so Scorpio is the 8th sign in the zodiac, and we will talk more about that in more gematria videos. But you have to acknowledge that 8 is a symbol, and that is of the, many of you have seen that. We usually call it the infinity symbol, or the lemniscate. Let me see if I can spell it. I think that's how you spell it. But we often refer to it as the infinity symbol. So this would be what energy you're working with. Remember I said Scorpio is the 8th sign of the zodiac. So this has to do with extremes. I did a video talking about Scorpio extreme because your reactions to things can sometimes be very extreme and even shock you at times, and you're not really sure where it's coming from, or maybe you didn't intend to react the way that you did. So because this symbol, this infinity symbol, represents a continuum, look at it also in terms of a wave. It's energy. So if this could continue, it would be like this, and the energy would continue on like a sound wave. So this would represent the negative, this would represent the positive. So in your character and your behaviors, you will demonstrate both aspects of this energy, that flux, that wave. So the negative manifestations of this would be represented by your unconscious state. So this would be jealousy, obsessive behavior, being cold, manipulative, in extreme cases sadistic, even spiritually dead, where you're just unaware of your spiritual need. So that energy can manifest in a very negative way, and this would be the negative aspects of the Scorpio sign, or the Scorpion, where you can sting people with your mood and your reactions, your explosive nature. If you have Libra and other energies that are a little more gentle and balanced and subtle, it could help filter that scorpionic energy so you aren't always necessarily at the bare bottom of this energy. But when I talked about that coming up or rising from the dead, that rebirth, this is when you go through a transition. You go through a phase in your life where you're transitioning. Maybe you're cutting people off. Maybe you're changing your diet. Maybe you're moving on from a relationship. Maybe you quit drinking. Maybe you went to rehab. Maybe you're doing something, but the change is going to be drastic. It's going to be transformative. So it could be like you change your hair color or something like that, but you know, Scorpio deals with more in-depth changes and transformations. So it would be something noteworthy where you reflect on it later in life. You know, I remember when blah, blah, blah. And you can go through multiple transformations to your life. So this energy would be coming from that state to a higher state, or vice versa, going from a higher state to where you go through some transformation and you can decline and go into that lesser expression of that Scorpio energy. So when you come to a more positive expression of the Scorpio energy, it would represent your psychic abilities, the healer, the shaman. This is a person who's a wonderful counselor, a listener. Your intuitive senses begin to really heighten to where it's a benefit to you and it can help guide you in your decision making. You become more accessible to people. You know how they will often say, or you may read about Scorpios, that you can come off as intimidating, a bit scary to some people. I know for me as a woman, I sometimes can seem a bit witchy to people, and I've had some people cut me off because of just my nature, how sometimes that energy can manifest in me, and I may seem a bit, as I mentioned before, dark or just difficult to read, I guess. But I've learned to not try to conform to other people's expectations of me because it's limiting and confining, and I don't do that self-deceptive life, you know, trying to live based on other people's means. But I digress. So you will begin to become more accessible, where people will accept that part of you that seems a bit different or otherworldly, or the people who secretly are interested in things like tarot or you know, getting a psychic reading or talking to a mystic woman. Like, people are curious about these things. So if you look intimidating and gothic or dark, chances are they're going to run from that curiosity. But if there's something about you that looks more or less like you carry wisdom and healing and more of an ancestral energy, more of an indigenous energy about you that attracts people, because a part of them remembers that is what we once lived by, based on our natural understanding and expression of the earth and nature and how it's healing and so forth. So Scorpio, you can tap into that positive, where people are attracted to what you have to say that isn't conventional religion, traditional beliefs, you know, laws and dogmas and that rigid belief system that they've grown up with. They may actually be attracted to that side of life that deals with mysticism and the occult, metaphysics, and so forth. But this would be a higher expression of it. It wouldn't be that you're doing $20 Ouija board readings in the back of a van. This would be a higher expression of that spiritual wisdom, and it's not bound by anything. It's not a boxed religious belief system. You will also be more passionate. Many Scorpios, you already know how passionate you are about a thing, but that passion won't manifest as manipulation and greed or anything like that. It will manifest just as you being loyal, that people can depend on you, that you will come through and follow through. So positive expressions like loyalty, commitment, you know, being there for people, standing up for people who don't have a voice. All of this can manifest as a part of the positives of that Scorpio energy. And most importantly, as you become fearless. As we're going through changes in our world, and very extreme changes, you know, you're seeing riots and protesting over the last few years. You've just seen an uptick in people's need for change and reformation. You can spearhead that. You can be in the forefront, Scorpio, because you are passionate and you're very much like that. You have that serpent energy in the sense that you can be strategic versus manipulative. You won't manipulate people, but you know how to read people enough to know just when to get in and do what you have to do. So that is very much a positive. So as you're going through these fluxes and energy throughout your life, the highs and lows, the death and rebirth, the traumas, pains, loss, fears, remember, you will come out of that not just with a lesson learned, because sometimes that's not really a jewel. When someone's like, oh, you learned a lesson. You're like, I don't care about learning a lesson. I want something more that I can build on, and lessons are great in life, but unless you really attain and project the qualities that come along with that lesson, you haven't really learned it. It's like children will sometimes repeat the same stuff, and you may say, oh, I hope you learned your lesson. You were running in the house and you fell, but chances are they're going to run again and fall again. So until you've gone through something very traumatic and difficult, and the lesson may not even come until years later, you don't experience the lesson right away. But as you come up from that darkness, the benefit of the lesson will begin to manifest. And that could be, again, years later. So you had the situation happen, but it wasn't until you were 22 or 47 that all of a sudden the benefits of what you went through and the value of the wisdom starts to manifest. And you can feel on top. You can feel on top of the world. You can feel spiritually alive and just invigorated and a new breath, a new take on life. So this is something interesting to think about. Scorpios are often read as being complex, and misunderstood. But it has to do with this paradox in your personality, paradox in your life experience that everyone won't understand. It will be complex because you can go through these extremes, and those extremes are what equip you with the spiritual wisdom that is just a part of your life experience. So if you know how to utilize the things that you're learning and apply the knowledge you're learning and share that with others or display that in your everyday life, it definitely can make that energy more of a gift. As some people feel like it's a curse when you go through things and you have traumas, and you can just become bitter as a result of your hardships. But you'll start to see it as a beautiful thing, and that's really why I wanted to introduce this symbol, because it is, in like all numbers, they're symbolic. And until you look at the symbolism and that energy, it can be quite difficult to understand what it all means. So you are essentially riding a wave. You will have highs and you will have lows, but you will be prepared for that. You'll understand that whenever you're underground, think of this as the earth. This line right here is representing the earth. So whenever you're underground or in a difficult situation, think of it as the time to plant seeds. You have to start planting seeds. If you know something's going to come up in life again, because that's the nature of life, may not be as traumatic or difficult as a previous experience, but something will come up. And during that time, instead of sinking into bitterness and resentment and sorrow and self-loathing, go ahead and plant those seeds while you're in the underground, while you're in the earth, in a sense. I'm speaking symbolically, obviously, but while you're underground, now's the time to plant those seeds. And then you're going to water and nurture those seeds with the higher qualities that you learned from the previous experience. The knowledge you gained represents that water. Water those seeds with that knowledge and that experience and those life lessons that you've gained. So when you come back up, it's gonna be amazing, transformative. And the relationships you attract as a result of that will amaze you. You'll start to attract people that will be more of mentors for you, that will have something to add because you know what you want, you know what you're looking for. You don't have time anymore for the frivolous dealings with people who are of low vibration, low energy beings that will drain you. And Scorpio, you know a thing or two about draining, because sometimes you can have that effect on people. It can be a bit draining because you need so much stimulation that you will start to drain that or pull that from other people. But you have a source where you can pull from already, and that is what that transmutation is about. Pull from your own trauma and your own pain. When you feel the need to be explosive or to be very emotional and cry, use that energy and transmute that energy by thinking and projecting and planning and strategizing and seeding for when you come up, when you rise for the future. And yes, it's always about being in the present moment and experience life in the present. And you can do the same thing in the present where you're utilizing your energy for something positive. And it may not feel like it's possible at that moment, because I've gone through that where it feels like I can't just be happy for the sake of being happy. It wouldn't feel genuine or authentic. I can't change the way I'm feeling in this moment. But I can consciously, remember, if this represents the unconscious, I can pull energy from the consciousness, my conscious present awareness. I can pull energy into that unconscious place where I'm able to see what I need to do, how I need to maneuver, who I need to cut out. So when the time comes where you're at that crossroads of transformation, you can actually transform and move on. You won't get stuck and then slip backwards into that state. So I'm going to cut the video off here. I hope that you guys found that information useful. I've seen quite a few of these tattoos with that infinity symbol, and I know people, will associate it with like forever and love forever, but there's so much more that is packed into this symbol as far as knowledge and the life experience, and how we can seize that information for something more powerful, in our expressions of self, because we're just vessels and we're expressing ourselves in our lives, everyday life, and usually it's just based on our planetary influences and our reactions, from other people. We just react and eat, sleep, and die, and it shouldn't be like that. We should have so much more insight as more developed spiritual beings in today's time to change that, change our behaviors and our characteristics and our beliefs through knowledge, through listening to our spiritual insights, like as they come in and you get these realizations and revelations and downloads or whatever you call them, act on it, don't let it just sink and you never allow these things to bear fruit. So again, thank you guys for tuning into my channel. If you have comments on the subject, definitely leave your comments. If you found this information useful, go ahead and like and share. And we're going to have future discussions on mental health, again, dealing with astrology. I know Scorpios love digging in and talking about the psyche and how these things affect your life, and just trying to understand yourself, because you are very much a deep sign. So yeah, this was interesting. Thank you guys, and until next time, peace.